Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Trump DOJ going nuclear on DEI at colleges and companies nationwide. Trump has just put in place a new head for his civil rights division at the Department of Justice. It's Harmeet Dhillon. From CNN Politics, Justice Department's storied civil rights division will fight DEI under Trump. This will extend to colleges. This will extend to businesses, nonprofit organizations. Whoever's been discriminating against people illegally is now going to be in trouble with the Department of Justice. And this is a big change. Here's what the Department of Justice had been up to as recently as June 2024. From Legal Dive, lawsuit says uniform employment screening can be discriminatory. Companies are advised to review their practices after the EEOC goes after Sheets for the disparate impact of a policy that treats all job applicants the same. This was a lawsuit from the Department of Justice under the Biden administration going after this company because they hired people on an equal basis. They were people with criminal histories that they didn't hire to handle money and to run their stores. And because that affected certain people differently, it affected apparently Black Americans and Native Americans at a higher percentage than it affected white people, even though they were treating everyone the same. They went after this company. So you've got companies acting on advice from the Department of Justice to discriminate against people or hurry up and lower your standards before we go after you. That's coming out of the federal government. But that's not going to be the policy anymore. It does make sense, though, because there are so many companies and so many colleges going out of their way to discriminate against people based on their race that you would have to wonder, what are they all completely crazy? You know they're doing things that are illegal. How can they possibly be doing this? Like, to what benefit do you really get out of it? It's not better for work. It's not a better work environment. No one's really writing you checks directly. Yes, there are managers that are getting cash bonuses, and yeah, there are executives that are getting cash bonuses by doing discriminatory practices, but who gives them permission to do these illegal things? Apparently, it's been the Department of Justice, and it's not going to be that way anymore. When I was on the board of a small public company, if you wanted to sell some of the stock that you got as part of being on the board of directors, you would have to get a legal opinion. You'd have to get an attorney who was known to know securities and give permission and basically say, look, on the advice of this attorney, yes, it's appropriate to take this action. And I bring it up because it does make sense that, sure, if the Department of Justice, if the federal government through their civil rights division or some other federal office was saying, sure, you need to discriminate against people. If you don't, you're doing the wrong thing. We're giving you this official writing, this official opinion and statement from the federal government. Okay, that does make some sense. And that's also good to know that's really about to change 180 degrees. From Fast Company, how Trump plans to use the DOJ to challenge diversity programs. The plans would turn the power of the DOJ Civil Rights Division against policies designed to benefit marginalized communities. And when they say marginalized communities, they're talking specifically about Black people and the civil rights era of the 1960s. Yeah, but that was 60 years ago. So if that's not what's going on right now, and you're marginalizing some other people, then of course, they're going to focus on those other people too, at the very least. They're not going to ignore it because whatever the agenda was in 1964 or 1965, whenever they were doing this 60 years ago, it wasn't started because of their skin color. It was started because they were Americans that weren't being treated properly. And that's where Donald Trump comes in. From Reuters, DOJ versus DEI. Trump's Justice Department likely to target diversity programs. He's not just likely to target diversity programs. That's a huge part of his agenda coming in as president. From Axios, Trump's election win boosts anti-DEI investing. There are people setting up anti-DEI funds targeting companies that are discriminatory, at least a couple of dozen of them, saying, you know what, these companies are probably not going to be doing that well over the next year or two. Why don't you invest in a fund that will bet against these companies doing well? And that fund was recently launched in Florida in Mar-a-Lago. In the Biden administration currently, they're not really paying attention to multiple complaints against companies discriminating against certain people. This is from Stephen Miller's America First legal organization that he started that has filed lawsuits against companies for discrimination, but also filed numerous, and I mean numerous complaints with the EEOC, a federal organization that's supposed to look into this kind of behavior. That's the same organization that went after this company, Sheetz, for hiring people based on merit, because it happened to affect certain people of certain skin colors in ways they said were unfair, which is of course ridiculous. You have to treat everyone the same, regardless of their skin color, their gender, or their sexual preferences. But the EEOC basically blew off all these complaints from Stephen Miller. They did complaints about Williams-Sonoma, Hy-Vee, CrowdStrike, Smithfield Foods, Tyson Foods, Shake Shack, Disney, NFL, Hasbro, Mattel, IBM, and many, many more companies. All of these complaints are now going to get followed up with. These companies now have almost a golden opportunity to contact the Trump administration, the incoming administration, contact America First Legal and say, you know what? We'd like to get right with you guys. How can we do that? Give us some advice and then start some positive action and be part of the solution. They could do that. If they don't do it, they're going to be facing down a very severe Justice Department correction. Lawsuits, embarrassment, bad publicity, stock price damage. It's all coming. From CNN Politics, Justice Department storied Civil Rights Division will fight DEI under Trump. President Donald Trump's Justice Department is preparing to go on the anti-woke offensive against diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that have been a cause célèbre of the right. Which is to say, we've just about had it with this nonsense, and somebody's got to fix it. Trump's pick to lead the Justice Department's storied Civil Rights Division, conservative San Francisco attorney Harmeet Dhillon, is expected to use the powerful perch to reverse many of the Biden administration's civil rights initiatives. Initiatives like this one, to go after a company who's just trying to create a safe environment by excluding people or including people on their job applications in a completely non-biased, equal way. They can't control if it affects certain populations in certain ways. It's beyond the control of Sheetz, a convenience store chain selling like gas and candy and cigarettes and things like that. How are they supposed to fix the culture? All they're going to do is demand you lower your standards. They have to run a business, and they also have to provide a safe environment for their customers. If confirmed by the Senate, Dhillon would be in a position to upend the division's work on a range of hot-button areas, including transgender rights, voting, and policing. In particular, the division is expected to try to dismantle DEI policies at schools, government agencies, and other public institutions. In announcing Dhillon as the choice earlier this week, Trump specifically touted her work, quote, suing corporations who use woke policies to discriminate against their workers. A longtime litigator, including for Trump, she's also been involved in a host of First Amendment lawsuits, disputes over COVID-19 restrictions, and causes concerning gender-affirming care. Decisions by schools and employers to embrace DEI initiatives have come under fierce opposition from the right in recent years. Critics say DEI programs are discriminatory and attempt to solve racial discrimination by disadvantaging other groups, particularly white Americans, but also Asians. People of all kinds are treated unfairly. And if anyone's being treated unfairly, then everyone's being treated unfairly. Who is the federal government or anyone else to choose? No, you've got the wrong skin color. You've got the wrong sexual preference. We're not going to hire you. You don't deserve a chance. Because we have an agenda we're trying to push. We're trying to accumulate as much power as possible. And this is our agenda for getting that power. So we're going to discriminate against you. Oh, all right. We don't have any constitutional rights. We don't have laws in this country anymore. Now we do. Yeah, we're getting them back. Supporters of DEI insist the decades-old practice has been politicized and widely misunderstood. Well, you're the guys who are running the practice. So if you want to explain what you're doing and what you think you have the right to do and what you don't have the right to do, go ahead and make your case. Don't use and abuse positions of authority to force people into impossible situations. Justin Levitt, who served as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division, under President Barack Obama, said the incoming administration is likely to turn the division away from efforts to end discrimination against minority groups and move towards ending policies aimed at helping them. Quote, the Civil Rights Division historical mandate from the beginning was to help fight against othering, was to help fight against societal branding of certain Americans as other, Levitt said, which is what they're doing with DEI. He continued, quote, and I'm concerned that the prospective nominee's approach has been to lean into branding people as other rather than fighting against it. I will say this for the DEI pushing people. They're not talking about othering white people or Asian people or people that don't have the right sexual preference. What they do is they exclude them completely. They don't say those people are bad. They just exclude them. Like they don't even exist as human beings. That's the whole idea. Lower the standards enough so that whoever they're pushing can get accepted into whatever opportunities there are, whether it's college or it's a job opportunity or a school-related thing. And as far as the people they actually are othering, just don't mention them. Make it so they don't exist. So it's not really othering them, it's just eliminating them. These people are worse than othering. Their agenda takes people out of the equation. Their agenda takes people out of existence. It's not a good thing. It goes to a very dark place. People who've worked closely with Dhillon tout her experience from her start as a lawyer advocating for migrants who were persecuted in their home countries and seeking asylum in the U.S. to her more recent work on First Amendment issues. Dhillon, an Indian-born immigrant, has been active in Republican politics since the 2000s. Her national profile was boosted 2 years ago when she unsuccessfully ran for chair of the Republican National Committee. Quote, she advocates so hard for each one of her clients, said Mark Trammell, the executive director and general counsel for the Center of American Liberty, a legal advocacy group founded by Dhillon. There's just tremendous opportunity to do good for people who have been oppressed, and Harmeet loves this country. She loves the freedoms that we all benefit from. The incoming administration sees the Civil Rights Division as one of the most important in the Justice Department, and one where they need a Trump-aligned leader who will use it to champion a conservative view on civil rights, said a source familiar with their plans. A really important aspect of the Civil Rights Division is their control over election-related issues. There has been a lot of, let's just say, lax pursuit of questions about elections coming out of the Department of Justice. It's been used politically, not in an equal sides kind of way. That's going to change. Dhillon's selection, made before many other division heads have been announced, also signifies its importance to the Trump transition team. Created in the 1950s, the Civil Rights Division leads the Justice Department's enforcement of federal laws intended to combat discrimination in areas such as housing, employment, and education. It's also tasked with enforcing major federal voting laws, such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Historically, the division under Republican administrations has been largely dormant. Not anymore, though. During Trump's first term, for example, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions curtailed the use of pattern and practice investigations, which the division would launch into local police departments accused of wrongdoing. But under Democrat administrations, the division typically takes a much more active approach in waging high-profile civil rights battles, a pattern that's remained true during Biden's term. Under Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark's leadership, the division opened civil rights investigations into a dozen police departments. Trump is not expected to continue those investigations or to pursue so-called consent decrees, which require federal oversight of police departments. The federal government has no business overseeing police departments. The federal government is not supposed to be providing like a federal police. Federal policing of local police departments is all about pushing their really nutty agenda. The Soros DAs, all that stuff. A key early sign of the ideological shift could emerge in the federal government's challenge to Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for minors. The Supreme Court heard arguments last week in the challenge, which was brought by Clark's Civil Rights Division in 2023. But it's possible that Trump's Solicitor General, in consultation with Dhillon, who has shown a hostility towards trans rights, will seek to flip the Justice Department's position in the case. That in turn could result in the High Court dropping the case altogether. On the DEI front, Dhillon would be able to throw the full weight of the division behind legal challenges to policies from public schools and other state and local employers that the new administration opposes. She would be limited in her ability to take private businesses to court over such issues. Still, the division could file friend of the court briefs in cases brought by other plaintiffs against companies over their hiring and personnel practices. Sure, that is true, but the federal government can act through the EEOC, just like they did with complaints filed for this Sheets lawsuit. And Stephen Miller already has, 50, 60 of these things filed, maybe more than are even published on here. These are all gigantic companies. Expect a very active EEOC from the federal government pushing these companies back into reality, making sure they follow the law. In recent years, Dhillon and her law firm have carved out a record on lawsuits related to constitutional law and the First Amendment, which can cross over into the realm of law sometimes considered by the Civil Rights Division. In the cases, she's represented a host of conservative figures, sometimes at odds with news organizations and being accused or accusing others of discriminatory actions. In one case against Google that is still in appeals, Dhillon's team representing the Republican National Committee unsuccessfully accused the tech company of, quote, throttling its email messages into spam folders because of its political views. She also filed multiple lawsuits that have gone on for years on behalf of a Presbyterian minister seeking to hold prayer vigils on the U.S. Capitol grounds and who couldn't get the permits. She also defended Fox News personality Tucker Carlson in a since-settled lawsuit from a former female producer at the network who alleged gender discrimination. Dhillon has filed lawsuits against other major organizations, including Twitter and CNN, on behalf of the right-wing activist group Project Veritas. She took on a similar role as a lawyer for the Trump campaign, suing the Washington Post in 2021. Outside of free speech cases, Dhillon has represented the National Association for Gun Rights in recent years in a Second Amendment case in California. And we all know how California feels about the Second Amendment. Not big fans. She also became part of defending the Republican National Committee in court when civil rights groups accused the party, Trump, and his campaign of disenfranchising black voters under the Voting Rights Act after the 2020 election. The case was dropped after Trump's victory in the 2024 election. In many of the lawsuits, Dhillon was accompanied by lawyer David Warrington, whom Trump recently said he would install as the White House counsel. White House counsel is a very powerful position. Harmeet Dhillon has also been involved with the Trump campaign, and she was a big part of them bringing multiple legal actions protecting the vote and making sure the voting was legal this time in 2024. And from Fast Company, how Trump plans to use the DOJ to challenge diversity programs. President-elect Donald Trump is set to challenge policies aimed at boosting diversity at companies and universities when he takes office next month, throwing the weight of the U.S. government behind growing conservative opposition to such practices. Because they are unfair and because they are illegal. If we let them take away those rights, what rights will they take away next? You have to stand up and say, no, we have constitutional rights. You're not taking them away just for your own benefit or whatever your purpose is. Not interested. The Justice Department and other federal agencies are likely to start investigations and bringing lawsuits over diversity, equity, and inclusion policies as they argue that many of those practices violate anti-discrimination laws, which of course they do. Quote, DEI is unlawful discrimination, said Mike Davis, the founder of the Article 3 Project, a conservative advocacy group who has advised Trump on legal issues. Quote, it's illegal for the government to do it. It's illegal for universities to do it. And it's illegal for companies to do it. It's illegal when anyone does it. The plans would turn the power of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, created in 1957 to enforce laws aimed at stopping discrimination against Black people and other marginalized communities, against policies designed to benefit those groups. Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which forbids racial discrimination in programs that receive federal funds, could empower the Justice Department to challenge university admissions practices and racial equity programs in healthcare. But the argument is going to be to the extent that there's a consideration of race in any context by any entity that receive federal funds, that's a problem under Title VI, according to Danielle Conley, the head of the anti-discrimination practice at law firm Latham and Watkins. Trump vowed in a campaign video to direct the Justice Department, which he has every legal right to do, to pursue civil rights investigations into universities, saying they've been captured by the radical left. Well, we're going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all, Trump said in his video posted in July. Legal challenges could include claims that universities are not following the U.S. Supreme Court's 2023 ruling barring consideration of race in college admissions. The Justice Department, under Democrat President Joe Biden, defended an exemption allowing U.S. military academies to continue using affirmative action policies, a stance Trump could reverse. America First Legal, a conservative group founded by Trump advisor Stephen Miller, has brought 15 lawsuits since 2022, targeting major companies like Facebook and Instagram owner Meta Platforms and Amazon.com over their diversity efforts. That doesn't include all the EEOC complaints. There are many more EEOC complaints, plus those lawsuits. Civil rights advocates fear that even the threat of government scrutiny will cause companies to back away from prior commitments on diversity. Quote, "The risk I see is that employers may be worried about getting sued and roll back their programs," says Samir Teropoulos, a senior policy counsel at NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. Quote, "At the heart of these attacks is fundamentally an attempt to hoard opportunity for a limited group of people. We're not going to change our constitutional rights to pursue an agenda that you might want to pursue. There's no legal call for it. Those are our God-given rights. The government is supposed to protect those rights. We're not going to strip away people's rights just so you can pursue an agenda. It doesn't work that way." Walmart in late November became the latest major U.S. corporation to scale back its DEI efforts, following JP Morgan Chase and Starbucks. A delusion has definitely set in with a large part of the country that think that it is okay. Maybe they got the okay from the Justice Department. Maybe they were just paid off. Maybe there's a combination of things. But there is mass delusion about how you can be illegal if you think it's for a good reason. You can do what you want to do, even though it's breaking the law and it's violating other people's rights, if you claim it's for a good reason. And even if a few of your friends go along with it and say, yeah, let's do whatever we want to do, it's because we want to do it. Well, that's not good enough reason. The new Department of Justice, the new people within the Department of Justice, and the EEOC will deal with this delusion. And it's about to all go down. I will follow it on this channel. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.